We have met in this space 3 times before to explore the concept of the liberal arts, to examine the first 2 aspects of our theme, self and stranger. So today then we are looking at the final part of the theme, community. But our approach will be to travel again through the entire arc of the course. You will hear about developing a sense of self and about feeling like or encountering strangers and new cultures. And of course, being part of a community. The title of today's convocation is Culture Shock and Community. Here we go. Our structure is that of a panel conversation. There are 4 members of the Monmouth College community here, and I'd like to introduce them briefly, but they will each tell you more about who they are as we proceed. So first, we have Cam Williams, who's the director of the Teaching and Learning Center. And then we have Professor Jennifer Martinez Morales, who's a visiting professor in classics. And then Melissa Hernandez, who is a senior international studies and French major. And Justin Opam, who is a freshman biology major from Ghana. So thank you, all of you, for being with us today. Are you ready for the first question? Okay, here we go. Who are you? In particular, what different cultures are you a part of? Make sure you, take it off of there and turn it on too.
Hello? Hi. Who am I? I'm Justin. All right. Seriously, different cultures. So as you heard, I'm from Ghana, and which is a country in West Africa. Most of you might know that already. I am born and raised in the city of Accra. But in Ghana, when you are trying to explain where you're from, you actually take the part of your dad or your mom, depending on what tribe you come from, what tribe they come from. So in terms of my dad, he's from the northern part of Ghana, and my mom is from the western part of Ghana. And the dilemma that I face in trying to explain that is, where my dad is from, you take where he's from, and then where my mom is from, you take from your mother's side. And so I'll kind of say I'm half and half. I'll kind of say I'm half and half because, so if, for example, someone is from the southern part of Ghana, they also take the mother's side. So if someone from the southern part of Ghana was to marry someone from the western part of Ghana, the child would be from the western part because they also take the mother's side. So in terms of who I am, I would say that I am a Ghanaian from the northern and the western part of Ghana. And different cultures, I would say, yeah, it's kind of a mix because it's very different. It's very, you can't really find so many similarities. So I've had a mixture of cultures growing up, and even though, truthfully, I've never ever been to where my dad is from, but I've been so many times to where my mom is from. And so I can't really relate to where my dad is from, even though he has told me some things that they do. I mean, he explained the funeral rites that they do in the northern part, which is very gruesome, but you don't want me to explain that, but yeah. And yeah, for now, that's one.
Hello, everybody. Well, who am I? Well, first of all, I'm Jennifer Martinez. I'm in the classics department. But I consider myself, I've traveled a lot. I'm originally from the island of Puerto Rico. So it's in the Caribbean. part of the U.S., and I consider myself a part of the Hispanic and Latino culture. I mean, my first language is Spanish. I learned English at a very young age as well. Throughout when I was learning Spanish, I was learning also the English language. But I consider myself a citizen of the world. I've traveled a lot, and I've gotten to know people from many different countries. And it is amazing, the similarities. I'm from a small town in the island of Puerto Rico. I'm not from the city, I'm not from the capital. And it's just amazing how many things, being from the Latino culture, how many things you find in common with people from Greece, for example, which is one of the experiences that I'll be talking a little bit about for the second question. But yeah, I've been in Monmouth since July of this year. And I absolutely love it here. It's such a wonderful community, and you guys are so lucky to be here. But yeah, I consider myself a Latina, a very proud Latina, but proud of my heritage, and yeah, I think that's who I consider who I am.
What's up, y'all? What a loaded question. So who am I? I'm a first-generation U.S. citizen. My parents migrated from Colombia. My father is Afro-Colombian. So those are kind of the cultures that I consider myself a part of. You know, first gen in the States, but also have this like really rich cultural background from a country that I'm very connected to, go to visit often. What else? Who am I? Jeez. All right, I'm a student. Hello, senior year. You'll get there. And yeah, I'm studying French and international studies. And I feel like who you are is always changing. So as of right now, that's what I have like nailed down.
Hi, everybody. I love this question. So I'm sure Stephanie will remember this last year. I'm Cam Williams, like I said, that's a part of who I am, director of the Teaching and Learning Center. So last year I was asked the same question, and some of the professors will probably remember this too. I'm big on Ancestry.com, and so I've been doing some research. So clearly, right, African American, born here, obviously roots like Justin from Africa, and as I pinpoint it down, it's looking like my ancestry is the Ivory Coast. So that's where I'm at right now, which is really neat there. But along with that, like she said, I was a student. I'll be a student again next year when I start my PhD program. I'm an educator. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. So that's me.
Okay. Question 2. Describe some of your encounters with other cultures and how those encounters have changed you or helped define who you are.
For me, I have been to different countries. I've been fortunate enough to be to different countries in the world. And I think the one that really I changed my perspective of meeting different people was when I went to Kenya in April earlier this year, and it was my cousin's spouse who is from Kenya, but he's not really Kenyan. He's from Somalia, so he's Somali Kenyan kind of, and funny enough, they are all Muslims, and from asking questions and trying to find out like how they got here and everything, there's no Somali Kenyan who is in Kenya who is a Christian, and so going into that community, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect because I have never been in a Muslim community. I have Muslim friends, but I've never been in a Muslim community ever. So I was I didn't know what to expect, but I had an open mind. And so um, when we got to his village in Kenya, a part of Kenya called Garissa, and before you even ask for water, they bring you tea, which has a lot of sugar in it, and it was crazy. And for every house that we visited in Kenya, before you ask for water, they bring you tea. I'm like, okay. And they have the tea with camel, the meat of camel. I don't know how to say that, but so I had camel for the first time in my life, and it was good. I ate the hump, and so yeah. So and how it changed me. I really had this rigid thing about Muslims that they were not free enough to do certain things like socialize and talk to different people in certain ways. But my encounter with them was very different. They were very accommodating. They were very friendly. I don't know whether it's because I was connected to one of their family members, but it was, but even people that I met who were not family were very welcoming and very accommodating and very, very friendly, kind of like Monmouth, people in Monmouth. Yeah, so how it has changed me is when I try to go somewhere different where I don't know people, I just have an open mind these days instead of having a stereotypical view of people.
So some of my encounters with other cultures. Okay, so well, my first encounters with other cultures came when I was studying abroad. I did my undergraduate studies in the island of Puerto Rico, but I moved to England, and I moved specifically to the city of Liverpool, the home of the Beatles. I don't know if there are any Beatles fans, but yeah, it is a very large city, and it's a very multicultural city. You have people from absolutely everywhere. In particular, it is very important because of its university. So we have a lot of, they have a lot of Chinese students, Italian students, students from Greece, absolutely even countries that I've never heard of, they were in that. So the student community was a very multicultural community. And as you can imagine, coming from Puerto Rico, where all we have are Hispanics, I've never experienced such a life in a massive city with people from many different parts of the world. But it was absolutely lovely. I got to meet some wonderful students as well. And it was really the first time I encountered European culture. One experience in particular, I was able to travel. They had very good discounts for students to travel, so I traveled a little bit. But when I was doing research in Greece, that's my area of expertise. I work on ancient Greece. Everybody I met in Greece talked to me in modern Greek, so they all thought I was a Greek lady. And as you can imagine, I know very little Greek, so I wasn't able to communicate very well. But the way that they expressed absolutely everything reminded me of everybody back home. And I was just in awe and shock because the way that they moved, the way that they expressed the same feelings with their hands and the way of speaking, it was very, very much like Hispanics do. So I could get a sense of what exactly they were telling me just because I was accustomed to the same type of body language. When people are talking to you, it was very expressive, and they talked a lot with their hands, and their facial expressions changed in just a second, and it reminded me of everybody back home. So I could immediately understand what they were saying, and it was just the way usual Puerto Ricans speak. So it was very familiar in a sense that you would never know because Greece is so far away, and it has absolutely nothing to do with Hispanic culture, but I found that to be very close. And very familiar in such a foreign country.
So similar to what Justin was talking about earlier, for me, the other culture that I feel has changed my life and helped me define who I am is really like understanding where my parents come from, and that's including my dad's African heritage. So the first time I went to Colombia was in 2012, and I never really explored that side of, or I never specifically explored the Afro-Colombian identity of my dad, even though it was very like obvious in my life growing up. So the first time I went to Colombia, that was where I got to be, that was the community that I spent most time with Afro-Colombian communities in Suarez. And that experience profoundly changed my life and helped me define who I am, because it not only did I really get to encounter like where my family came from, how my parents' culture has been carried right across like continents and borders, but it really just allowed me to see the beauty of like the diaspora, in particular the African diaspora, and that's something that is super important to me now. A lot of what I do now is because of that experience that I've had, and getting to explore my identity in that way allowed me, one, to really know who I am, and like really affirm that. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people have a hard time exploring that side of themselves, because it could be painful, one, it could be scary, we don't know how to start, right? So, and those were a lot of things that I felt when I was exploring my own identity and heritage. But then also growing up in Chicago, a very segregated but diverse community. I went to really diverse high schools, and getting just to know all those different people from different backgrounds was really helpful in my upbringing, because I felt really able to connect with more people than I would have had I just gone to, like, I don't know, the neighborhood school or things like that. But yeah, those are my encounters so far.
Good stuff. Ancestry.com, you guys, it works here. Okay, so that's a really good question. I looked at all of these last night. So me and Stephanie were having a talk. A lot of you weren't here last year to hear a story, and I'm not going to go back into that one. But basically, I'm a black girl from Iowa, right? And if you think about that, not a lot of diversity. But you can also tell I'm not a shy person. So for a lot of you students that are in my office, this is the way I've been. My mother would tell you since I burst out of the womb. So when I think about this question, I'm going to share a funny story with you guys. So like a lot of you, I struggled, right? I went on an academic track scholarship to St. Ambrose University across the river. Almost fell out twice by the end of sophomore year. Just, having a little bit too much fun, and you get the point. When I finally decided to get my ass in gear, I would go to Scott Community College, which is in Bettendorf, Iowa, to take classes. So this particular summer, I was taking my Spanish class. Did well in it, cheaper. I'm standing in the registration area, and you see Cam, but my name is actually Camila, Kamileh. So what's happened over time with a mother like I had that was a civil rights activist, right, and my father, it was two things. People either call you Cam, right, your nickname, or don't call your name at all. Because, right, my mother did not want me to go the rest of my life with it being butchered. So I get up to the desk, I'm going to register, and there had been a young gentleman, very gorgeous, next to me, and he looked like maybe he was of Latino, Indian descent. But I remember looking, and smiling, he's kind of smiling, and so I go up, I give the lady my name, and I say, it's Camila, and she's, okay, we'll be with you in a moment. I sit down. She calls my name, and all of a sudden, this gentleman just starts laughing, you guys. I mean, just hysterically laughing. So I kind of look, I go up to the lady, I'm registering, I'm thinking back, I'm like, what the hell is he laughing at? So I turn to him, and I'm like, why are you laughing? Stands up, and he's like, hi, my name is Prashan, and I'm from Nepal, India. And he goes, the reason I'm laughing is, he goes, what does your name mean to you? So I'm proud, right? My mother's told me, I go, it's perfect, right? It means perfect in Swahili. I had a friend who was Muslim who told me it was perfection in the Arab language. He looks at me, you guys, ready, with a straight face and goes, well, in my culture, it means little ant. right? And I just go, wow. So with that experience, obviously, right, he became a friend, but from my experience with different cultures, it made me want to know more about who I am, right? Each of you should want to do that. So I remember, meeting with him. We exchanged numbers. It was a little too short to date, if you know what I mean, but we became friends. And so I remember getting back to campus and telling one of my many mentors the same experience and situation. So she was like, you know what, that was. Because you realize, right, what your parents had told you in the Swahili culture, it's perfect. But in another culture, it's a different language. And so, like Melissa kind of said, I just started doing research. I remember joining the international club that Erica Buckley's the head of, where I had friends that were of the Latin background, right, that were from India, Muslims. There's so many of them in my family. I love having those debates because here I am, a black girl with a Baptist background, but I could have those deep conversations. So I would say those experiences taught me to appreciate who I am, want to know more, but to also do discovery.
How did your first experience of feeling like a stranger or encountering a new culture teach you something that you were able to apply to your next encounter?
Okay, to feeling like a stranger. Okay, so what it taught me was to to be very observant, to ask questions, because when you're very observant, then first you can study what people are doing, and then next to ask questions is to know why they're doing what they're doing, because for every community that has a particular kind of practice, they most of the time have a reason for doing so. Because like going back to my experience in Kenya, when they have lunch, they sit outside on the floor, on mats, and everyone eats from the same plate with your hands. So it was weird for me, but apparently I asked that why they do that, but for them it's more of, it shows like a strong bond within the family, and it brings togetherness in the family. So so to be observant and to ask questions, and so that is what I apply to myself when I am going to any other new place, to be observant, to ask questions.
I think that something that encountering a new culture, something that teaches you and that you can apply to your next encounter, it's adaptability. The fact that you can adapt yourself to the many different environments that you will find yourself throughout the course of your life. You have to be, in today's world, you have to be a person who adapts well to many different environments. When I arrived at Monmouth this July, having moved from Puerto Rico to England, and then from England I came to Florida, and then I came to Monmouth, so it's quite a journey. I was able to adapt very quickly, and each place had its own different quirks, and each place welcomes you in a way. It's just your way. You have to find a way of navigating your way through it. And one of the reasons I was able to adapt so quickly to this new town, it's the sense of community, how everybody is so nice and how everybody is so welcoming. And as you say, it's asking questions, be observant. I think that's very important as you go through life.
So my first experience with feeling like a stranger, that's for me to answer the question was like, it took me so much time to think about it, because so I like I said earlier, I come from a first-gen background, so I feel like a very strong cultural connection to where my parents have come from, but also recognize that I grew up in the United States and with all, the privileges that comes with. However, growing up in this like dual environment, like in my household, right, speaking Spanish and then walking out the door and like having to speak English, or those like very specific cultural things that I feel like a lot of first-gen Latinos go through really didn't make me feel like there was, well, it didn't really make me feel like I wasn't a stranger, right? Because like in the United States, there's like these stigmas of Latinos or things like that. But then also in Colombia, like who's gonna look at me? You know what I mean? Like I'm obviously American, so or a U.S. citizen. So something that I learned from feeling like a stranger is that I know what it feels like to be a stranger. And so that like insight, when I finally like realized like, dang, I kind of, well, one, it taught me that I know what it feels like to be a stranger, and so two, I know how to treat a stranger. But, right, a lot of people don't. But three, what else that taught me was that it doesn't necessarily matter how people, or like what people think in terms of your identity, because that's something that you are allowed to define and you are allowed to create and cultivate, right, because you're always changing. So bringing that into how did I apply that to my next encounter, it was really important for me to recognize and understand and really explore what it feels like to be a stranger. And I did that by reading a lot of diasporic literature, a lot of poems, and let me think. Yeah, well, a lot of, or even like films and stuff. People that write about the first-gen experience was key in helping me understand what that, putting words to what that experience is like. And so when I meet new people, or when I meet people from different backgrounds, or when I meet this stranger, quote unquote, it really allows me, I feel, to like build on that connection, right? Like of being an outsider, or of not really understanding who you are. And so I feel like those are the ways that feeling like a stranger or encountering a new culture has helped me. And for example, I can give the example of like coming here for the first time. I'm from Chicago, from the west side. Is the west side, okay? And that was like a really, really, obviously really different experience for me. And so when I came here and I had all these like understanding of my own, right, feeling like an outsider in these cultures that I felt like I was a part of and very strongly connected to, coming here I was like, dang, there's gonna be so many like young women from Chicago that are gonna freak out when they like walk into Wallace Hall and there's no heralds around and like no good, well, anyway, I'm not gonna get into like what Monmouth doesn't have, right? But so what that allowed me to do here was like cultivate this really amazing and beautiful friendship with all these strong women of color on campus. And that has profoundly changed my life. I really don't think I would have made it through Monmouth if I didn't have a community to come back to. So I think like understanding that I'm not the only person, like I'm not responsible just for myself, but also for other strangers that are just coming after me, other young women that are coming after me, other young women of color that are coming after me. I personally feel like I have a responsibility in order to ensure their success, or like, I don't know. I mean, and obviously that's like a huge responsibility and very unrealistic, but I try to do my part in like lifting people up as we climb. I think Kenny told me that once, so I don't want to like, that's not me, but I feel like Kenny has said that. How do we live as we climb? So yeah, that's something really important to me and what I've learned in my encountering of new cultures.
Wow, I've had a lot of experiences, which I shared with you one. But I'm going to take it from this stance, like I said, being from Iowa, the Iowa, Chicago, a lot of family and stuff. Being a stranger, I'll be honest, at 37 years of age happened a lot. Being the only black girl in the class, right, in AP class. Are you in here? Oh, is it because of affirmative action? Oh, are you really smart? Is that your real hair? You are so pretty for a black girl, I promise you. You know, I would date you for a black girl, but my mom. Those are all examples, right, of what I went through because I was that stranger in that situation. Being a predominantly, right, white school, high school, junior high, elementary school. So what it taught me, thank goodness, like I explained to you, having a father and mother that were absolutely amazing and knew who they were, that I'm okay, A, being different. I'm okay, you know what, sometimes being that stranger. Because through that, right, I grow out of strength. Clearly, right, I'm not any of the above things, but it's something my grandmother also said too. Sometimes, right, actions speak louder than words. So yes, was I that black girl from elementary school up till high school that worked 10 times harder? Absolutely. It's the message I share with each and every one of my students now, regardless of your race. But then the other side of that is what Jennifer said, and she said a little bit of adaptability, right? So again, it got to the point where my parents, when I was in those classes, was like, okay, you're that stranger, but you know what? What can you do to learn? Adaptability doesn't mean change yourself or forget who you are, but it's being open to learn about other people. Be the ones through your action to correct those ignorant statements, right, or those human beings that don't know. So that was my experiences, and which is why it was easy for me with Prashan to laugh and what did I say I did at the end? We exchanged numbers, right? I could have took that situation like, oh my gosh, you know, cursed him out, he's making fun of my name. But because it was already there, I knew who I was. So wow, I'm now going to learn. That is so cool. My name means something different. I've had to go to predominantly white schools my entire life. I've been around, right, predominantly white institutions. So this is golden for me, right? So I can educate them while adapting to a certain degree, but also holding on to who I am. So that's what those experiences have given me.
I want to talk a little bit more about what you're talking about, and right. So because of like I don't know, these many cultures that we're able to connect to, we have this adaptability component, right? And that's something I actually write in like my resumes and stuff like that because I'm like, it's true. Like I really feel like that's a true statement. However, like, excuse me, for me, growing up, or like coming to Monmouth specifically, I had the worst time adapting. And it was like really difficult for me to do that. And part of, like, I want to acknowledge a little bit more about, or I'll just speak from my experience coming here. It was really, really, really hard. And like adapting, although it's like this really great characteristic that many of us can carry, it comes with some weight. And like for me personally, it's a beautiful experience, you know what I mean, after you like are done dealing with things, but sometimes it's really hard to recognize like, dang, I really don't feel like I have a place here. However, that's not to say that you can't create your own, right? So, yeah, I really like that. I also agree with what Jennifer was saying about adapting, because that characteristic really is so useful later on in life. And I never honestly would have imagined that all those like experiences here at Monmouth would have prepared me for like what's after Monmouth in a sense, and even not like just career-wise or professionally, but like emotionally, I feel that I've become incredibly stronger because of encountering these like extremely opposite experiences from where I come from.
All right, next question. All right. Describe how you have become connected to a community or different communities, and what can communities and individuals do to help create and strengthen the experience of community?
How I've become connected to a community. It's more like when you go into a different place, or going to, like how I went to Kenya for the first time, and being with Muslims all the time. It was a great experience, but how I've become connected to them is, I mean, there are some shared practices that they have in common with where my dad is from. Because where he is from, the majority of people are also Muslims. And so they have this certain, as in like, they eat a lot of meat. Not pork, obviously. But they eat a lot of meat, and where my dad comes from, they also eat meat. So, I mean, there are certain practices that they have in common, and so that is what I feel. I mean, with my dad also trying to instill those practices into me, I feel that is where I can connect with people from Kenya and and what communities would help to create. Okay, what you can do to help create or strengthen this experience of community. Look, be open. I mean, talking about adaptability, there is this quote from this guy, P.W. Botha. He says, adapt or die. And to die doesn't mean that you be actually dead. It means you can die with, I mean, coming to school coming to Monmouth for the first time, studying in the U.S. for the first time. For me, what I found difficult initially was time management, because when you're in school in Ghana, it's different. You don't have so much homework throughout the week, and you don't have 50 minutes of classes. It's like 2 hours for one class for the whole week. So if you have 4 classes, you have just 2 hours for each class, just for the whole week. So, so that's what I'm talking about. To adapt, to be able to adapt to wherever you go, to have an open mind, and for me, those are the 2 qualities I feel we should need to be able to survive and help create and strengthen the experience of community.
One of the ways in which I have become connected to a community or different communities is basically by meeting as many people as I can. I think one piece of advice that I would give you is that making an effort goes a really long way. If you go out of your way to meet people, to be engaged in different activities that you perhaps would not normally do, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic way of meeting new people. And this will allow you to create your own mini environment, and it all depends on how much effort you actually put into meeting people or being engaged in other activities. For me, the college helps a lot for this. The new faculty orientation meetings that we have every week is actually a fantastic way of getting to know your colleagues and getting to know the activities that the college has. And it creates a sort of sense of community here. And in my case, getting involved with other departments and actually knocking on their doors and seeing, well, what are you working on? Is it something that we perhaps can collaborate? One example is I gotten in touch with the physics department, and you do not normally think about archaeology and physics in the same sentence, but it functioned. It worked perfectly well. For International Archaeology Day, I did a talk on the astronomy of the stars, and the history of astronomy, and the physics department was absolutely wonderful in trying to arrange a viewing of the stars. It was cloudy, and we couldn't go to upstairs to actually watch the stars, but everyone used their imaginations, and it worked wonderfully. And then with the chemistry department, I've gotten in touch with professors there, and I'm a big fan of technology and archaeology, so I've gotten in touch with how the 3D scanning facilities could be used to help archaeology students and help the archaeological collections here at Monmouth. So it does go a long way in getting to know other people and making an effort and taking an interest in what it is that other people are doing. And that will strengthen your bonds of actually belonging into a community.
So what I would say is you have to ask yourself, what does the community that you are currently in offer you? So what is that? How do you answer that question, right? You have to go out and like see what your community offers you. So, and as an example, like for me, when my parents first dropped me off here at Monmouth, they were like, "What are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna eat?" Because I mean, in my household, I traditionally eat Colombian food, right, or a lot of Latino or inspired food. And so I was like, dang, like, Mom, like, they're not gonna make tacos in the cab. They're not gonna make sancocho in the cab. So what did that mean for me? Well, I had to go into town and see what restaurants we had, if they were good, if I liked them enough. So going out of your comfort zone is something that I really recommend. It's not fun at first, but at the end of the day, I feel like you learn something, even if it's a trash experience or like a really bad experience. And also, like, I had met the president of the ACM a few weeks ago, or like last week or something. Her name is Sonia Malunda, and she like talked about her experience in her career, and I asked her how did she get to the point that she is, or the position that she's in now as the president of the ACM. And she said that she had been doing this job for like 20 years, and then she realized that she was really comfortable. And she said, being comfortable is beautiful, but nothing grows there. And that's something that has really stuck with me. Also, like, how do you build community? It's funny because I'm in a co-lead class for building communities, our citizenship. So that's something that we're like really exploring, and that's also some themes that have come up like this whole year about community. And a few things that I wrote down is sharing your experiences, really not being afraid to like, I don't know, be vulnerable with somebody, or not even, it doesn't have to get to that point either, but you know, talking about your day, or like getting to talk to someone like that you don't know, as Jennifer mentioned. Also, like building authentic relationships, something else that Jennifer mentioned, putting in an effort. If your effort is bogus, like people can pick on that. Like they know that your intention is bogus. So like building authentic relationships, really having, really wanting to know somebody is, and how you approach that is really, your intentions can be very clear, very transparent. Oh, and something else, cooking like is a really good community builder. Me and a few students cooked for dinner devotion. A lot of the international club came out and cooked for dinner devotion. And even though it was like really stressful because I was like, oh my God, we don't have time. It was still really fun. And I think like a lot of the young ladies that helped out, we got to know each other better. I mean, we saw what it was like to be under pressure. Like now I know, like, oh girl, it's gonna panic. Like when you know, when we're on a time crunch. How have I become connected to a community? For me, has again, like I mentioned earlier, exploring my own identity, and really getting to understand that my heritage and being proud in that. And so for me, personally, it has been getting to know a lot of the Black women on campus, and authentically, you know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't like, oh, I found out my dad's Black, so I'm gonna go meet all the Black people I can. It was definitely not like that. But those experiences where like I felt like we had something to share about our experience in the diaspora, right? And what does that mean for us? Like how do we cope with it? Was really, really powerful for me this semester in particular. But yeah, I would say sharing a part of yourself like is never a bad thing. And although it's painful, although it could be hard, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like we're better for it, honestly. So yeah.
Describe how you become connected to a community or different communities. Well, I'm part of a lot of communities. Obviously, the Monmouth College community, academia community, the Black community. But what's interesting with me is the law enforcement community. A lot of you don't know, so I am married to a black man that's also a cop. And just given right with the whole tensions that are going on today. So those would be the many communities. I would say a community of openness and willingness. Meaning I have friends, like I said, that are black, that are white, that are gay, that are straight. I think it starts with being involved. Like she kind of said, stepping outside of your comfort zone. Considering today what I shared with you, if I could do it right being from Iowa, then any of you can. Because you guys, right, you're our future. So as tense as times may be, right, as stereotypical times may be, or the things you thought you knew, it's got to be up to you to make that change. So in that next part, what communities and individuals to help create, like I said, involvement's important. But I'm also going to say this, guys, and I mean this with due respect, because I get a lot of students in, do not believe the hype when it comes to the media. Because the media will have you believing, right, that every young black man is a thug, every black woman, right, is angry, every white girl, right, doesn't care. You get the point. So step outside of that, like I said. Be involved. Knowledge is infinite. Knowledge is powerful. Nelson Mandela, it said that years ago. You've got to be willing to learn as much as you can. Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. That's how you make those changes. That's how you build a community. Like I said, you are that next future. And so a lot of times I'll have, right, a lot of you students, and whether you're students of color or not, and you're hurting, right, you're angry at this professor or that, and what do I tell you? How do you learn from it? Again, that's involvement. How do you see past that, right? Is racism always going to be there? Absolutely. To the day, like my grandma says, our Savior cracks that sky, right? Are stupid people going to be there? Absolutely. Is jealousy going to be there? Yes. But what are you doing to change? What are you doing to make it better? What are you doing to look above that? Work as hard as you can, right? Be willing. I think a beautiful platform like this from Stephanie and the other professors is amazing. Mark had it last year. It was the same conversation. This starts right here. Because at the end of the day, we are the Monmouth College community. There's not a time you can't look on the media, right, where people are going into buildings and they're shooting people for worshiping the way they want, or they're shooting people for being gay. Again, you've got to be that change. Because if we don't, then we might as well give up now.
I want to say one more thing. I know we're almost running out of time. Going off of what Cam said, finding your resources is key. And so I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure everyone on the panel is willing to agree that if you guys ever have any questions about what we discussed right now today, how did we get all these things? So you can use us as a resource. Come to me after, I don't mind.
You're out of time. Yeah. So we are out of time, but I encourage you. These people are members of our community. If you have more questions for them, come and find them and speak with them. Join me in thanking them for being here today.